With Ninja Gaiden Ragebound coming out later this month, we're spending all of July looking back at the critical impact that the franchise had in the early days. Last week, we dug through the Nintendo Entertainment System trilogy, so now it's time to look back at a few of the lesser-known Ninja Gaiden games, including the Lynx port of the arcade brawler, the exclusive Game Gear release, the Game Boy game spin-off made by the people that gave you Shadow of the Ninja, and the hidden Sega Master System gem that everybody seems to have forgotten about. Yeah, that's a lot of Ninja Gaiden, but are any of these games actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Ace, Computer and Video Games, and more classic magazines that reviewed these games back when they first came out. So go and grab your throwing stars because we're digging into the portable entries in this episode of Ninja Gaiden Review Crew.
You gonna buy the same old game, boy?
Atari Lynx, the portable video arcade. Lynx, so packed with action, racked with attraction, stacked with more games for total satisfaction. It'll blow you away. Lynx, more fun and games from Atari.
For many gamers, their first exposure to the Ninja Gaiden franchise was through the 1988 arcade game. This was a side-scrolling beat-em-up that was in the spirit of games like Double Dragon and Final Fight, only now with a ninja hero who's surprisingly nimble. It also had one of the most gruesome game over screens of all time, something that really helped to set it apart from all the other brawlers in the arcade. While that specific version of Ninja Gaiden never made its way to the Nintendo Entertainment System, it did eventually land on the Atari Lynx in 1991. Although corners were cut to get it to fit on the handheld, this is a more or less faithful translation of the 1988 beat-em-up. Lynx owners were excited to have yet another high-profile game on their fledgling system. What did the critics say? Now, if you watched the first episode of Ninja Gaiden Review Crew, then you already know that Electronic Gaming Monthly liked both Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. As it turns out, they also liked Ninja Gaiden on the Lynx, with Steve calling it an excellent conversion of an excellent game. Ninja Gaiden hits the mark on all counts. There are lots of good moves, and the scrolling is very smooth. Like Warbirds, this shows what the Lynx is capable of, even with its small screen. One of the best Lynx games produced. Sushi X agreed. Nice job, dudes. The Ninja Gaiden coin-op never looked better. Well, maybe a little. Anyway, this is still a marvelous job done bringing home one of the most popular arcade games of all time. How they got it all onto a little Lynx card is beyond me. Keep 'em coming. EGM gave Ninja Gaiden an average score of 8 out of 10. That score is right in line with the 4 out of 5 that we saw GamePro give the game in their 25th issue. For what it's worth, the lowest score comes from A's, but seeing as they employ a ridiculous 1,000 point scale, it's also kind of the highest score. Giving Ninja Gaiden a score of 715, they concluded that, oh, it's a beat-em-up alright, but surprise, surprise, it takes place in an urban setting. The catsuit-clad hero must negotiate the mean streets, taking out the homicidal maniacs who besiege him from every direction, with the ultimate aim of finding and slaying a fellow ninja possessed by a demon. In the game's favor, the ninja has some novel moves at his disposal. Extra weapons and power-ups can be found inside the wreckage of smashed telephone booths and packing crates. And the bizarre bunch of foes range from masked thugs to log-wielding fat men. But despite that, there's nothing here to shake you from the ennui-induced lethargy of seeing yet another ninja game. Moving back up the scale, we see that GameZone more or less agreed with the consensus, giving the arcade port a solid 83%. The highest score actually comes from Computer and Video Games, who ended up giving Ninja Gaiden a fantastic score of 89%. For the Lynx's first beat-em-up, Ninja Gaiden is a little short of superb, and really addictive too. An excellent title, and one which any self-respecting Lynx owner should race out and shell out for at once. And you know what? I agree. While it's true that I prefer the NES games over the arcade original, there's no denying that this is a great port and one of the early standouts for the Lynx. With an overall average of 81%, pretty much everybody agreed that this is yet another winner under Ryu Hayabusa's black belt. "1991 was a big year for Ryu Hayabusa. This was the year that not only brought us Ninja Gaiden 3, the Ancient Ship of Doom, Ninja Gaiden Shadow on the Game Boy, and of course the Lynx version of the arcade brawler, but Sega fans also got their taste in Ninja Gaiden with a completely different Game Gear game. Although visually similar to the side-scrolling NES trilogy, this is a whole new game complete with a different story and a bunch of new cinema scenes. It's actually a pretty slick package that's been mostly overshadowed by the more popular NES games. Well, let's see what the critics said. Published in the exact same issue that saw a review of the Ancient Ship of Doom, Electronic Gaming Monthly wasn't excited about Ninja Gaiden on the Game Gear. Giving it an average score of 6.75 out of 10, this was seen as Ryu's one misadventure. Steve complained that this game has an awkward look and style that reminds me more of Strider than Ninja Gaiden. That point aside, Ninja Gaiden for the Game Gear is a nice addition to the portable's growing list of action carts. But it still comes up short on gameplay and, in some areas, graphics. Martin liked the game a little bit more, but agreed with the comparison. This cart is just Strider with a stronger license, namely the mega popular NES hit. What's the matter, Sega? Don't you have any faith in your own titles? Good graphics and gameplay make this one of the better Game Gear carts. The game is too easy and the password was not needed. While EGM score wasn't the lowest, it might as well be, as GamePro gave the action cart a so-so 3 out of 5. Moving up the scale, we see Sega Force giving the game a 71% in their very first issue, which is the same score that Sega Pro gave the title in their third issue. Game Zone, on the other hand, went a few ticks higher, giving the game a 74%. The key word really is ninja rather than Gaiden. This is an attractive, if fairly standard horizontal scrolling ninja beat-em-up. This means that it's all fairly standard ninja fare, but none too bad for all that. The action is smooth and colorful, as are the backdrops. The main sprite animation is okay, and the ninja is able to execute the usual range of whirls, twirls, and wall scaling for which the hooded ones are famous. Reasonable though it is, the Game Gear's Ninja Gaiden isn't a patch on the Lynx game of the same name. Good, but not special. As we continue our trek looking for those higher scores, we see Ace once again employ their ridiculous 1,000 point scale, giving Ninja Gaiden an easy to understand 800. That's right, just 800, on the dot. That's interesting, I suppose, but the highest score actually comes from Sega Power. They praised the great graphics, good soundtrack, clever game design, and short length, but also complained that it's too short. Go figure. A great hack-em-up that just manages to survive on the Game Gear's limited display. Solid, frantic action that'll keep you hooked, but probably not for very long because you'll have finished it by then. If you liked GG Shinobi, then you'll love this one. While not quite on the same level as the NES trilogy, or even the Lynx game for that matter, the reviews paint this Game Gear title as a good but flawed action game that's a little bit more like Strider than Ninja Gaiden. With an overall average of 72%, many critics gave this Sega-published entry a tepid recommendation.
If you were colorblind and had an IQ less than 12, then you wouldn't care which portable you had. Of course, you wouldn't care if you drank from the toilet either. Game Gear.
While it may have the Ninja Gaiden name, and may even star Ryu Hayabusa, make no mistake about it, this Game Boy spin-off started its life as a portable version of Shadow of the Ninja. You can certainly see that in its name, Ninja Gaiden Shadow, as well as the level designs and even the gameplay, which takes a lot of its cues from the 1990 Natsumi game. And you know what? There's a good reason for that, because this Ninja Gaiden spin-off was actually developed by the same team that brought you Shadow of the Ninja, making it a really fun hybrid no matter which ninja franchise you preferred. But hey, what did the critics say all those years ago? Did they mind that it wasn't a proper Ninja Gaiden sequel? Of all the magazines that reviewed Ninja Gaiden Shadow, only Video Games and Computer Entertainment brought up the connection to Shadow of the Ninja. I actually like the way that they handled it in their review. Ryu Hayabusa's first appearance on the Game Boy is called Ninja Gaiden Shadow because it was created by Natsumi as a portable version of its NES hit Shadow of the Ninja. A little tweaking, a new introductory sequence, and a title change were all it took to convert Natsumi's efforts into Tecmo's latest martial arts masterpiece. Aside from the missing intermissions, you won't hear any complaints from me. In some ways, Shadow of the Ninja could be considered a better game than the original Ninja Gaiden. They concluded that detailed graphics, realistic animation, a throbbing musical score, nasty boss characters, and satisfying gameplay have been the hallmark of the Ninja Gaiden series to date. And Ninja Gaiden Shadow has no problem meeting any of those criteria. Video Games and Computer Entertainment gave the game an 8 out of 10. Now, for what it's worth, not every magazine was as won over by the palette swapping. For example, you saw Nintendo Power give the game a 3.7 out of 5. GamePro went even lower, giving the game a surprising score of 3 out of 5, concluding that Video Game Ninja Masters will note that although Ninja Gaiden Shadow closely resembles the NES games, it doesn't live up to the standard in length or challenge. However, the crisp, authentic graphics and that old black ninja magic make this a good cart for ninja wannabes and a nice afternoon's diversion for hardcore Ryu fans. Naysayers aside, most of the critics love Ninja Gaiden Shadow. You saw Ace ditch their usual and ridiculous 1,000 point scale to give the Game Boy game a 4 out of 5. Computer and video game offshoot Go liked it even more, giving it a high score of 90%. In fact, Paul Rand was nearly out of breath when he reviewed it for the magazine's 8th issue. Phew! Ninja Gaiden Shadow is a furious frenzy from start to finish. You'll go glassy-eyed over the graphics, slaver over the sound, and pop a cork over the playability. A brilliant beat-em-up worthy of anyone's time and money. While I prefer both the NES version of Ninja Gaiden and Shadow of the Ninja over this hybrid game, I would still argue that this Game Boy title is well worth playing. It's one of the better action games on the handheld. With an overall average of 76%, Ninja Gaiden Shadow rates higher than the Game Gear game, yet a bit lower than the Lynx port. Not a terrible place to be. If you're one of those people who loved the Ninja Gaiden trilogy on the Nintendo Entertainment System and always wanted another installment, then let me introduce you to Ninja Gaiden on the Sega Master System. While it doesn't exactly continue the story of the NES trilogy, it comes close enough and gives Ryu Hayabusa another amazing side-scrolling adventure to conquer. Not only was this game released exclusively on the Master System in 1992, but it was also never released in the United States, so there's a real good chance that a lot of you out there never played this hidden gem. Let's go ahead and take a trip across the pond and see what the critics said about the Master System version of Ninja Gaiden. When it comes to the reviews, almost everybody was on the same page, giving Ninja Gaiden scores in the 80% to 90% range. Now I say almost because there was one big outlier, and that's Sega Power. They went all the way down to a 53%, so I figure that we might as well just get that review out of the way and then focus on the rest of the bunch. Sega Power praised the 8 long levels, the variety of weapons, and for some reason the lack of moves, yet complained about the graphics and the empty space in each level and that there are parts that are too easy and too hard. Looking for an excellent fighting platform game? Well, keep looking. This game doesn't cut the mustard. The sprites are too small, the gameplay's lacking, and it's dead tough. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, Sega Power was the real outlier when it came to Ninja Gaiden. In fact, the next lowest score comes to us from Mean Machines, and it's a full 30 points higher. Giving it an 83%, Rob argued that decent platform games have been a bit scarce on the Master System recently. Ninja Gaiden more than makes up for the relapse. It boasts excellent graphics, full of color with a detailed attention to the backdrops. I was also impressed by the animation, which, like Prince of Persia, manages to fulfill its potential. While Ninja Gaiden doesn't have much in the way of new ideas, it does prove very successful with the old ones. And it's this fact that makes the game well worth a look. Moving on up that scale, we see GameZone champion the game with an 86%, while Sega Master Force went all the way up to a 90%. Wow, that's the same score that we saw from the similarly named Sega Force. Wade through the multitude of opening screens on this one, and you'll find a real belter of a platform romp. The scenario's uninspired, but that doesn't matter when the gameplay is so smooth. Who cares about sacred scrolls? Just get out there and start dishing out death. Ninja Gaiden's great to look at, the music and in-game effects are nicely atmospheric, and above all, the controls work a treat. Jump up to a branch or across the ravines, and Ryu holds on and sticks where you want him to without any fuss. If you're a ninja freak, you gotta get a hold of this one quick. And even if you're not, Ninja Gaiden's got a whole lot to offer. Look, maybe it's because it came out a little bit later or was stuck on the Sega Master System, but I'm honestly a little bit surprised that more people haven't discovered the greatness of this version of Ninja Gaiden. It tells its own story with new levels and an adventure that honestly I'd put above Ninja Gaiden 3 on the NES. And with an overall average of 80%, the critics agreed. This is a good Ninja Gaiden game.
Tiger puts arcade action in the palm of your hand. Games like Ninja Gaiden. As the ultimate ninja, use your spin, jump, and fire wheel to destroy your enemies. But watch out, you must pick up the red power boost that will keep you alive through 9 levels of action. Also available, Tiger's Ninja Gaiden wrist game for the time of your life. Tiger LCD video games. Video excitement in the palm of your hand.
Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we're covering the full Ninja Gaiden series all throughout July. We've already covered the NES trilogy in the last episode, which means that the next time around we're going to be looking at that Ninja Gaiden compilation on the Super Nintendo, as well as another Ninja Gaiden game on the Lynx. It's all going to conclude with an episode looking at the 3D reboot series. Now, here's the question I have for you. Is the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden good? That's it. That's the question. Let me see your answer in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back next week with a look at a new Jalico Sports collection, as well as some more reviews. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.